Welcome back to another exciting Small Engine Sunday. Technically, I guess it's still a small engine, right? We don't have any mowers or go-kart stuff lined up for today, but we do have an assortment of parts set up to install on this Beetle because they came in, and I can't believe this, came in earlier than anticipated. So we're going to be installing some of this stuff here. Now, we're going to install the alternator because you remember the last one that we had on here didn't have the right wiring for the harness, so we got the correct one. We have a distributor that doesn't want to advance, so we got a brand new 034, which is the correct distributor, not one of them crappy 009s. 009s are garbage, guys. We'll talk more about that in the video. And we also got a starter because the existing starter is grinding. And I'm looking at this, and I don't know if that's the right starter. The diameter of this thing looks mighty small. Now, I know I ordered the right one, but I think this looks more like a 6-volt. I have to count the teeth on it. I think that's the giveaway. Anyway, we're about to find out. Also came with a bushing. We're going to try to install that too. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. All depends on how big of a fight it's going to be. So we're going to see. Anyways, that's what we're going to do today, and this wants to roll off the hood, so safe now. Haha. So like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to pluck that dingle bell so you get updates every time I upload a video. And we'll be back right after that intro. All right, well, we are back. We are back. And the weather out here is actually kind of friendly right at the moment. It rained for the past 2 days, which is the first time it's rained in 2 months, which is kind of a surprise because the weather here is usually typically very awful in the summertime, and it rains just about every day, horribly, but yeah, 2 months of dryness. So everything is muck today because it's been raining so much. What I'm doing here is I'm getting all the stuff out of the way that's going to affect us getting to that alternator. So I'm pulling off all of these wiring harnesses, the custom wiring harness I made in the last video. Well, I used in the last video to get this thing started. I'll heave that out of the way. Our carburetor is going to have to come back off, I think. Pretty sure. Because when I lift the shroud back out of here to get to the alternator, I think the carburetor is going to be in the way. Alright, carburetor can be a little hard to get to, especially in these later model engines where the alternator is bigger. Oops, turned that the wrong way. Duckman, you dummy! The alternator is bigger than the generators of the past, and this one also has the dash pod on the front here for the emissions EGR crap, which is real frustrating, but that's just the way it goes. That nut just fell down. It sounded to me like a spark. But there shouldn't be any sparking because the battery's disconnected. Anyway. Come on now. There we go. And this is one of Dad's vintage tools, which was a discussion in the end of my previous video, which I can tell who watches to the end of videos and actually paid attention there because I got a lot of comments about vintage tools and their worth, as opposed to buying everything brand new and either A, wasting your money by throwing away all this good stuff, or just getting more junk that's not going to last as long. Alright, there's our carburetor. Put this down the intake manifold just to keep anything out of there. It's like we got a little bit of dampness got under the tarp that was on here. That was covering everything. Gonna put our nuts back on the carburetor so we don't lose anything. Gotta take our generator strap off. This I didn't tighten up as much as I would ordinarily because I knew I was going to be pulling it back off at some point. And in addition, I also didn't put the nuts on the ends. Okay, now this, you really don't have to take this out. You just got to get it up high enough that you can get to all 4 of the nuts. There's a nut here, well, bolt here, one here, and hey, look, the 4th one isn't even there. Well, that's an issue. We'll replace it and make this thing right, because that can cause the alternator to get cocked inside the shroud and cause the fan to eat the inside of it. Ask me how I know. You know, just for ease of service, let's just pull the whole thing up and out. Now, this cable is going to get us all hung up. Pull that out, too. There we go. Out she comes. What am I hung up on? Negative wire on the coil. There we go. Alright, first let's try to remove this pulley. Well, that came off really easy. Probably could have done that by hand. I don't know why I just put the nut back on like a ding-dong, but I did. Now, the second half of the pulley can be a little tricky. Sometimes you got to put a wheel puller on there to pull the whole thing out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right about here. Actually, I'm just going to get these washers out. So you don't want any of these to get lost. Come on, release. There it is. These come in a specific number. When we put it back together, we'll discuss that and why. Meanwhile, let's start pulling apart this shroud here. I think I grabbed the wrong size socket. I did. These are usually 10 millimeters, although the last one I took apart was 11. So I brought an 11 with me, but not a 10. Alright, we're going to remove 3 of 4 bolts that are here, because the 4th one is missing. The 4th one goes right there. It's currently gone, but this entire fan will lift up and out. And then we need to remove the fan nut. Got us a 36 millimeter socket with a huge ass socket adapter. That's the only way I could find a 36 millimeter socket. Anyway, this should take the fan nut out. And it did. Look at that. Fan nut's an interesting piece. It's not just any nut. It has a just unique machined character about it. So anyway, there's some more of those. Well, usually there is more of those spacers like you would typically find on, yeah, there they are, the shims that you would typically find in your fan pulley. So these are under there as well. So we got those. We're going to put those in a safe place. We also got our wavy washer, which is kind of like a lock washer. And then here, this little part, sometimes you got to get that out also with a puller, wheel puller. Now we got 2 nuts on here. Take these off. Now, I don't think we can get past that. We did get past. I didn't think we were going to be able to pull it past that wheel that needs to be pulled off of there. This is 2 pieces. There's the cover plate. Actually, 3 pieces, my bad. The cover plate, the internal ring here, and then the back. And the back has a chute on it. And this must be assembled a specific way, otherwise it does not cool your alternator. And what happens when your alternator overheats? That's right, it fries. So anyway, this all needs to go together a specific way, and I believe this is correct. I'm just going to double check to make sure the parts exploded view is correct on this one, just because there are times where it's wrong. But looking down inside of it, it looks like it's correct to me. It looks like that's the way the airflow is supposed to go. And then this goes installed one of 2 ways when you typically put it on the engine. But usually you want it where the cold air can get into it from the fan, so it would usually get clocked in like that. I don't think it goes in that way. Although it may not matter, but hey, we'll check the manual and just make sure. But that's when we put it back together. Now we got to get the interior pulley off. And the mosquitoes are back. Now that it's rained, the mosquitoes are back. They're biting the shit out of me too. Anyway, we got to pull this thing off of here. And sometimes you can just hold it like this and it'll just suddenly release. But no, this one's probably been on there for the last 50 years, so I'm not going to be so lucky. So I'll stick it in a vise and we'll get it pulled off of there. Anyway, we'll be back in just a minute. This guy came off pretty easily. Just simply stick this end in the vise so it was pinching here. And then using a short bolt, I put it on the end and just gently tap it with a hammer and it just slides right out. Watch your toes though, because once it starts to get towards the end, you can just pull it out, but don't let it come flying out. We might need the key, I don't know. There might be one underneath that red tape. In my experience, typically it is. The one on the other side, same drill. To pull off this hub, pinch it right here, and then just gently tap, and out it came. So, nothing to it. Alright, as far as the new guy is concerned, the nut that's on here, as well as the washer, these do not get used. Put them in your parts bucket. They're always good to have, just you never know. And yes, looking at this here, I see there's a key in there. So I'm going to need a razor to cut this off. This isn't tape this time. Looks like it's shrink wrap. Does it slide off? Ew, it does slide off. Look at that. Oh no. All right. We're rocking and rolling. Our hub goes on just like this. This guy, round end goes in first. The squared off end is the side you want to face out. Alright. we go. Usually it'll go on easy. There it goes. Nothing to it. Okay. Take the nut end off of this side. Same thing. Pull this red off of here. Alright, the inside part of the fan pulley. Pretty obvious which way this goes on. If you get this backwards, I don't know what to say to you. Alright. Get down here and push, push, and it's on. Alright, here it is. Boy, I got it nice and dirty. Alright, rocking and rolling. A little dirt's good for you, I guess. Alright, well, we'll put our washers back on here. This is the wrong stack of washers, and they all rolled away. All rolled away. Every single one of them. Anyway, we'll do the washer count on this later when we get the belt mounted. But I'm putting it back on exactly the way I found it, which was all the washers are in and only 2 washers are on the outside. There we go. 2 washers. Alright, and our nut is right here. We're not even going to tighten it. Oh, you know what? Hang on. I missed a piece. Got to put this little spacer on there. Trying to face the nut painted side out so everything matches. Alright, here we go. On the inside. Let's see. We gotta work on which way this gets clocked. Because if you clock this wrong, it's not going to cool that alternator properly. And I'm going to shut down for a second because everybody across the street's screaming again. Diagrams to find it, but the chute faces down. So this has actually assembled properly. So I didn't have to do anything to change anything, so it was all right to begin with. When does that ever happen? Usually everything's all screwed up. Story of my life, anyway. Okay, put our little washers back on here. And then we'll nut all over this thing. My washer's got away here. Here's the nuts. These are just 10 millimeters, so don't go hog wild on them and over torque them. You will not only strip them out, you could also break them off. Alright, there's our pulley. Or not pulley, I should say. This is the hub. We got 3 spacers on here, and I'm putting this back together exactly the way it was. And then we're going to double check it for spacing. Make sure it spaces itself out properly. Put the fan on here. We got our wavy washer. And we have our special nut that goes on top. 36 millimeter socket. Good. Now there needs to be a 2 millimeter space between the fan and the backing plate. And guess what? We have a 0 millimeter spacing. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to add a few more washers up underneath there. Alright, I'm going to have to go find a few, and then we'll be right back. Go. Spinning freely, no additional washers needed to be added. Wow, I never realized it, but just spinning that fast, I feel the wind coming off of this thing. It was definitely designed for that, no doubt about it. Oh, we're rubbing. Why? It's like I need to stretch it just a little bit right here. Should be fine though, otherwise it looks like it's got a good gap all the way around it of about 2 millimeters. So we can reinstall this in the shroud. Alright, in the shroud it goes. Now remember, we're missing a couple bolts here. So I'm going to have to look through his bolt container, or pretty much just a bunch of Ziploc bags, and see if we have what's missing from here. Just missed that washer. Uh-oh. And if not, I'm sure I have one in my parts bin somewhere. But otherwise, here we go, 3 out of 4. That's good enough to get us started. The mosquitoes are just biting the crap out of me this morning. Alright. Freely spinning, look at that. No rubby. Let's go ahead and get the shroud installed. Alright, in goes the shroud. Watch out for that throttle cable because that will ruin your day. Ask me how I know. Put our throttle cable tube back in. Before I push that shroud down all the way. This one has a weird bend in it too. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that. Usually they're not. But it does go. And there it went in. Lift that up just enough to get in there and feed the throttle cable through the back. I'm not even going to do that on camera because you're not going to be able to see it anyway. Alright, well I got that throttle cable in there, but you know what I missed? This is kind of funny. The alternator strap. Should have had this around the alternator before I ever put it in the car. Now you can stretch these open wide enough to be able to get them around the alternator, so it's not that big of a deal. But nonetheless, it is a nuisance. I also see that I pinched one of these spark plug wires up underneath the alternator there. Yeah, you don't want to do that. Alright, otherwise, spinning freely, nothing's rubbing, so we're good. So let's get that strap on there. I can't remember if it goes like that or like that. Yeah, I guess it's like this. There we go. Sometimes when you spread them open that wide, it's hard to get them closed up again. You know what? This might be backwards. Don't look right. Yep, it was backwards. There is a little bend in the strap. I'm going to show you. Take it off one more time just because. But see it right there? That actually needs to lock into the pedestal on which the alternator is sitting. Alright, so once again, I went in this way. I may need to get a pair of channel locks on there to squeeze that strap so that way I can get the bolt in. And sometimes it's a little tricky, especially after I had to spread it open the way I just did. But we'll get it. That should just about finish up our starter that we have on here. We'll have to get to the distributor, but before we get to the distributor, I'd like to change out the starter because that was one of our other issues. So before we can actually start it reliably and get this thing in tune and in time with the new distributor, let's go for that starter next. Alright, we're going to have to go in under the right side rear wheel. Okay, I got under here to loosen these lug nuts, and here's what I discovered. Yeah, you're looking at that. I haven't even put a wrench on it yet. So it looks like 3 of 4 lug nuts are loose. This one is the only one that's tight at all. And it's not even that tight. It feels like the threads are a little sticky. Okay, well, I'm not going to assume that any of the nuts and bolts on the brakes and everything are tight at all. I'm going to have to go through everything back here. This is potentially very dangerous. Meanwhile, we've got the jack under there, and I've got it underneath the rear torsion. I'm going to grab a block of wood, and we're going to lift up this corner of the car. Higher can the suspension go? Wow, that had a ton of relief in it. I wonder if this was lifted once before like it was a Baja, because that's tremendous. Alright, well, I can pull this out. Get that out the way. I'm going to put a taller ramp under there anyway in just a minute, but here's the rear discs that were installed prior to me. I'm going to get a good look at those and see what's going on there. And like I said, tighten up any loose bolts that we find. In the past, I used to not even show putting a jack stand underneath my car. But nowadays, with the way the whole internet goes in an uproar about things they can't see in the video, so if they don't see the jack stand, it's immediately, oh, Duckman, you didn't put a jack stand under it, you're gonna die. So come on, guys. Anyway, it's in there. We're good to go in that department. Looking over these brake lines and stuff. Doesn't feel like it's got the right bolts on the calipers. Well, maybe they are right. Definitely not tight, though. They will be when I get done with it. Okay. Good. Looks like we got new CV joint boots in here. Nice. The starter lives up under here, and I'm not even going to video all that because it's a real pain in the ass to get to. But there's 2 bolts on it. There's 2 bolts in it. Starter goes in just like this. The lower bolt on the bottom is actually a stud coming out of the transmission. It's a 17 millimeter. We can loosen it from the underneath side of the car. The other bolt, however, is a long D-headed bolt. That's right, it's got a D-head. From the engine compartment down behind the shroud, you have to loosen this nut and then push the bolt out that way. This starter is unusually small. As I said, I'm going to have to count the teeth, but I think both 6-volt and 12-volt starters have 9 teeth. So this might be right, it just looks unusually small. Maybe this is just how the new ones are. Maybe the technology has improved that much that they've gotten little. I don't know. It's the first time I've seen it, but this is a brand new starter. Links down below in the video description to everything you see in this video, of course. So if there's anything you'd like to do just like the Duckman, you too can do it from what you see in there. Anyway, we'll get up underneath there. It might be impossible for me to get to the bushing, and in which case I'm not going to change it out, because the only way I might be able to get to it is by pulling the entire transmission out. It's a real pain in the ass sometimes, but that's just the way life goes. So we'll see what we can do. All right, well, let's get up in the engine compartment and loosen that nut. Now, this one is, I wouldn't call it tricky, but it's not easy to get to. It's down behind the shroud. This is one of the engine mounting bolts. So do make sure that the rest of your engine mounting bolts are in and tightened properly before you try to remove the one on the top. I know you can't see it, but I can. And it's not easy to get to. And of course you don't want to slip because there's a lot of sharp edges under here, because you will slice the ever-loving dog shit out of yourself if you make a mistake under here. Not my favorite place to work. We'll be back in just a minute after we get this thing out of here. And here it is, it's out. 17 millimeter. And the engine didn't fall out because it's still bolted in properly. Alright, gotta get the other one off the starter on the bottom, and we gotta pull the wire off it too, which is usually a 13 millimeter, which I think I have here in my pocket. Gotta get off the wire that's on the starter. Alright, we're gonna blank out for just a minute. We'll be back as soon as we get that starter freed. Starter's out, and I got lucky as hell. It even got out the old bushing. I don't believe it. Anyway, to drive the new one in, we're just gonna simply put the new bushing on the new starter and then just bolt the starter in, and it'll drive it into place all by itself. Put a little bit of grease on the end, just a dab, before we put it into the new starter in there, but otherwise, not much to it. Okay, let me show you the old starter compared to the new one. There is a difference. You see that this is a much bigger, meatier motor, and this thing is kind of small and anemic looking. I don't know if there's going to be any issues, but otherwise the length of them is the same. Bolting flange is the same. They both have 9 teeth. They both have the same diameter shafts. They both have the same length of shaft. It does have a longer gear on it, but part of the Bendix, this big round thing here, is rather sticking up versus this one, which is recessed a bit. Now, I don't know why that would be so different, but that's the way it's manufactured. I don't know if that's just cheaper, or as I said, if the technology got a little bit better behind it. But I hope it works okay. I mean, it should be okay. It was the exact replacement part, and I forget what the company was that made it, but all the ratings on it were very, very good, as I saw online. So we bought it. I guess we'll shove it in there. We'll see what happens. If not, it's got a 3-year warranty on it. So let's see what happens. On the top, I slid the D-shafted bolt into the starter. And then on the top side here, we got to put that 17 millimeter nut back on. Now this is a magnet. The reason I've done this is so that way when I'm putting this nut on, it draws the bolt towards it. Sometimes this can be a 2-man operation. You have to have somebody underneath with one finger holding the D-shafted bolt in so that when you put the nut on, it doesn't, push it back into the engine case or transmission. So this solves that problem because the magnet will always draw that bolt towards it. This has helped me for many, many years and has been just a little thing in my toolbox since. So anyway, that's how I do it. Sometimes also, if you have a real problem, and I have, sometimes I put a magnet also on the head of the D-shafted bolt, so that way it kind of holds the bolt in place, and then a magnet here to help to draw it, and that works out even better if I have a problem. It's only for the really sloppy bolts if the holes are wallered out for some reason. Anyways, let's go ahead and get this wound in there, and then the starter should be installed. Well, sans the wiring. We'll do that next too, but there's nothing to that. There's our starter in place. Got our wires reattached to it. D-shafted bolts up on the top. Lower bolt, by the way, this one was only a 15 millimeter, not a 17. Well, I haven't seen that before. Typically, they're always the right size. Anyways, got everything hooked up here. I guess we need to connect the battery next and pull the trigger and see if it cranks over better. I suspect it will, by lots.
Ready? Problem solved.
All right. Sounds more like a Toyota now than a Volkswagen, which was interesting. I guess just a different style of motor make it all the difference in the world. It doesn't have that old industrial German mechanical sound of something, you know, from pre-war Germany. Anyways, good. I guess the last thing that's left is to put a belt on, if I could find one, because I haven't found one in this car yet. I guess I'll have to stop at the store and get one. And let's replace that distributor. And then we're set. This thing's gonna be just about finished at that point. I guess the carburetor's gotta go back on too. Can't forget that. It ain't gonna run too good without a carburetor, Duckman. Yeah, I guess you're right. Figuring while we're under here, let's go ahead and properly torque down this rear axle nut, because it's pretty safe to assume that the average Volkswagen owner doesn't own this tool, which is the right way to do it. If you don't have one of these and you own Volkswagens, and at least if you work on Volkswagens in any way, shape, or form, you need to get one. Now I'm betting that this nut is probably not tight. Oh wow, yeah, okay, not tight. You know what, the e-brake is also on, look at this. We're not adjusted properly at all, anywhere. Anyway, you don't always have to set the e-brake to torque this thing down. It's a little harder, but the deal is to turn it back in on itself, so that way these two arms are perpendicular, or parallel I should say, are parallel to each other, so that way you can actually torque it versus the entire thing turning, so it takes minimal effort to hold it in place. Yeah, this was not torqued on right. There it is, we just got torque spec. Usually these come in, I forget what it is, 300 foot-pounds or something like that. I got this thing dialed in at 300 right now, so that should be enough to get it. Anyway, we are torqued down effectively. This is not going to come loose. Also, under here missing was this little circlip. This is what holds the e-brake cable in place. I saw it in a bag full of parts, and I knew right away what it went to. But it needs to go on the rear calipers down under here. Lastly, we need to put in our cotter pin. Goes in there just like that. It's a snug fit. Wonder if that's even the right size cotter pin. What matters though is that it goes in. Its only purpose is to prevent this nut from loosening itself. Well, anyway, this is now resolved. I have to do the same thing on the other side, which probably won't be a portion of this video, but it's coming up later. And all this comes back off. Yay! Alright, I guess we're done on this side. We can put this wheel back on. And properly torque it down this time. Alright, instead of that plastic ramp, which seems to be like it's about to fail, it's got an awful lot of chips in it. Rob gave me a set of these metal ones, which also are much taller. Definitely an advantage for me because work on these cars, I like to have them up a little higher. There we go. Right, that's all back together. The brakes on this side look like they're going to be good. I'm going to go around and torque all the wheels at the same time. So I'm not doing that just yet. They are currently snugged up, but that's as far as we're going to go on that one. Alright, what's left is that distributor. Currently it looks like it's pointed at cylinder number 4. As you remember, 1 was back here. So it's 1, 4, 3, 2, 1 again. So, hey, what happened to my plastic that was in there? I wonder where that went. Good thing it didn't rain, because that was in the forecast. Alright, well anyway, I guess we'll get that fixed and straightened out. Anyway, we're going to pull out the distributor, and from my understanding and my memory, if my memory serves correct, the 034 distributor will be clocked 90 degrees out. So, number 1, or in this case, number 4, I think is going to be pointing back towards number 1, or maybe vice versa. Whichever way it's going to be, we'll get it right. It's as simple as flipping the wires around if that's the case. But anyway, here we go. 10mm bolt under here, and the whole distributor pulls right out. Pull that line off, it doesn't need to be there. Anything else that's going to be in the way, it can come out too. Alright, well, here we go. Quick moment to change my shirt because I was a sweated mess. I came on back out here and I went looking for this plastic bag because I was curious where it had gone, and it turned out it actually sucked it down inside the intake manifold. It didn't go far, it went just beyond that 90-degree bend right over here on the right. So I was able just to snag it and pull it up. So not a big deal. Could have been a lot worse. I could have had to take everything apart. I mean, it could have ended up way down in the cylinder head too, which it probably would have melted in there and just made a mess of things. But anyway, we know where it's at. We're not going to crank it over again until it's out of there. So next we're going to throw that carburetor on, and we're going to pull out that distributor. We're going to get this thing started up with the new distributor on it, which is right here. And I just did the wiring on it also. So that's all set up and ready to go. I used some nice shrink tubing on there and put those ends on. And we're going to get that sucker mounted up in there. One 10mm bolt was enough to get it out from underneath here. So let's go ahead and start with putting that carburetor on. While I was digging around, I discovered the bolt to the fan housing. That one bolt we were missing. It's right here. Now how about that? I don't believe it was that well labeled. It's one of those things that wouldn't have stood out. And here we go. And it's on. Good. Alright, let's loosen up this distributor. Don't need that nut to come completely out. Just enough to free this thing up. And this fuel line that's under here, I think has been driving me nuts at the beginning of this project. It's got a clamp on it. It gets in the way of the distributor, making it really difficult for me to do anything under here. Anyway, pull this distributor out. There it is. Now that that's out, I can take this damn fuel line off. Because that filter doesn't belong in the engine compartment anyway. But what happened is every time that I would try to put the distributor cap on, the stupid clamp would find itself over the lip of the distributor. So, yeah, it was a pain in the ass. Every time I'd push it away, it would just pop back, driving me absolutely bonkers. Alright, looking at this here. The little rubber gogie that's on there is nearly completely gone. Distributor's a little stiffer than it should be. But nonetheless, this is getting replaced. Alright. Alright, you guys have seen me do this enough times. I think you know how this works by now, what the drill is. You need to put a little bit of oil on the rubber gogie. That goes around. It makes it a little easier to get it in there. There we go. Okay, we're gonna pop the cap off. I'm gonna pop a cap off in your ass. Might want to come off. I just got tired fingers today. Those clips are incredibly tight. Wow. Hey, here's the little plastic caps that never came on an OEM Volkswagen Beetle anyway. They found them on rabbits, but if you have problems with these, sometimes your cap won't sit correctly, just discard it. You don't need it. It's one of those things that's supposed to help stop the oil fog that can sometimes get up in the distributor from getting up in the cap where you don't want it. Anyway, it doesn't have to be there. It was one of those things that was later appeared on a rabbit and then was retrofitted onto air-cooled. Okay, here we go. Now, if you remember, the index was pointing at cylinder number 4, so when we put this in here, it's going to tell us what order we need to put our wires in. Come on now, get in there. Did it go in? I think it did. Not quite all the way. There it goes. There it goes, and it's in. Didn't have to tap it with a rubber mallet or nothing. Alright, let's see what our index is. Where's the cap gonna sit? Well, you know what? It looks like we might actually be in the same positions we were before. Yeah, because if that's number 4, we're still pointing at number 4. So good news. Although we're going to change this cap out. Not going to keep the old one on there. Almost did. Almost did. This in here. This in here. Got our coil wire. What's going on in there? There it goes. And the last one. It looks like somebody did a little numbering on there. Coil 1432. How about that? Cool. Alright, well, we don't need that. That can go away. Got our coil wires here. Technically, they're distributor wires, right? We need to put our positive on the positive side. And on the negative side of the coil, there's only one thing that's supposed to attach there, and that is the negative side of the distributor, or the green wire if you have points of condenser. Do not put anything else there other than maybe a tachometer. Nothing else goes there, not even your timing light. So if you see somebody hook up a timing light there, they're wrong. Tell them no. Tell them the Duckman said so. Okay, we can get this out the way. I'm going to keep this little cap handy in case we need it. Got our plastic bag over the carburetor. Got our negative wire here for our fuel pump. I guess it's a matter of getting some stuff hooked up here and seeing if we can get this thing back in time. Back in time! Get our fuel pump hooked up first. There we go. The negative side of the pump goes to the negative side on the engine. My positive wire, I don't see it here. There's a little blue wire. Yeah, where'd it go? There it is. There it is. I found it. And this is going to connect to here. And then this side is just going to go onto the positive side of the coil, because when we energize this coil, we're going to energize the entire electrical system, makeshift electrical system that we have on here. Probably saw me hook this stuff up earlier in the video, or maybe in last week's video. Get this out of the way, make sure none of your wires are touching where they shouldn't be touching. Get our gas can down below. Put a fuel line in it. Go. Alright, let me get my long positive wire and get that finished up too. Alright, here's the temporary power wire that I made up for engine test stand stuff. Got 3 connections on it. One goes to the choke. Why the hell won't it go on there? Get on there! There we go. Next one should go on the plunger on the side of the carburetor. That's the idle shutoff circuit. So when you shut your engine off, you If it tries to diesel, it won't diesel, it'll shut it down instead. Okay. Tuck that out the way. I guess it's not going to let me. Okay, that's fine. And then the last one goes to the coil itself. I probably should have connected the fuel line last because now it's in the way. There we got it. Good. Alright. The other side of the positive line here. This is going to run directly to the positive on the battery. That should get us the fuel pump running. Should energize the coil. Noisy damn BMW. What a piece of shit. Oh my god. And it's newer too. Anyway. Let's get this thing hooked up. Okay, here's the fuel pump running. We should have some fuel pressure in there. Let's just see if it squirts. Whoa, left it off way too long. Alright, we got juice. Should have power. And if my wires are on the distributor cap probably, and I think they are, we should be able to pull that trigger and it should start firing. And if it does, then we can start setting the timing and or play with the distributor or fix my wires if I mess something up. But I think I got it right. Let's see what we got. Alright, nada. Try again. Need to put that battery on charge. Now it's firing. There it is. Previous video bitched that I didn't put the fan belt on, but how many air-cooled motorcycles have you seen that had a fan on them? Did they overheat when they sit idle? No, they didn't. Now it's cooling right now by convection, so the hot air is actually rising through and coming out from the fan on the back. So there is means of escape for the hot air. It is drawing in the hot air from underneath the car where the exhaust and stuff is, so I mean I wouldn't leave it running this way forever, but honestly you could probably leave it running indefinitely at idle, as long as you don't start revving the crap at it or something. You're going to get it hot then. But anyway, let's get the timing light, and let's make sure this thing is timed properly. Good to go. And don't forget to tighten down that distributor. I've forgotten that before. I got a few blocks away from home and the car stalled. In fact, it was Rob's Beetle. This is a recent thing. Rob's Beetle. I got not too far from home and the car just shut off and I had no idea why. I'm looking over everything. I can't figure nothing out. Everything looks like it's right. Well, the whole distributor actually turned 90 degrees and it wouldn't run at all. Anyway, easy fix. I pushed it 2-3 blocks to get it home, though, when I could have fixed it out on the road by just simply grabbing the distributor and just going, meh, and then drive it home and then tighten the nut back up. But anyway. Good. Let's disconnect my timing light. I think we're just about wrapped up with this, and we got a storm coming in here. It's been coming in during the video. You probably noticed how it got dark and it got light again, and it got dark and it got light again. That's the reason the storm is to my back right now. People off to my east are getting hosed, and this is the only reason I'm out here while it's daylight, because otherwise I'd be getting so sunburnt. It's also a nice day. It's only like 80 degrees out here. It's really not bad. There's a light breeze coming from the north. Well, they're getting poured on over there. It's also raining somewhere to the north. You can see that way up there too. So anyway, we're just about done with this video. There's Rob, he's sleeping in. Because we got our alternator in, we got our starter in, we got a distributor in time, we put the carburetor back in. I gotta find the air cleaner. I don't know if that's in the car. I haven't seen it. We might need to get a new one. And I need to put a belt on there because I thought I had one and I couldn't find one. Not the right length anyway, which is the only reason why it's not on there. I'm gonna look around one more time. I'd like to put that on before the end of the video just because I know people are gonna go, "No, man, you got a belt. This is what you do." Alright, do not forget to reconnect your vacuum line. This should have a shepherd's hook in it, but this line is long enough you can actually loop it up and over the coil. Get it down in here so that way it has that little place where it can trap any fuel that tries to get back down and around, so that will work. In addition, I was digging around in the car, I found the air cleaner, and that will silence a lot of that sucky sound that was making that which people in the last video seem to describe as a screeching sound. I don't know, to me that's it's a hiss, not a screech. Screeching to me is like tires, you know, metal on metal. A hiss is clearly not a screech, but having done, you know, 30-something years of customer service, I can tell you that when it comes to people describing sounds, most people cannot. Anyway, we got all this set up. Let's go ahead and start it one more time. Now that's a screech. The fan is rubbing the inside of the shroud for some reason. We're going to have to investigate that, but that's no good. That's no good at all. Wonder why it's doing that. It wasn't doing that before. Well, something we'll have to check. Alright, we'll be right back. Well, would you look at that? No more noise. All I had to do was tighten up the clamp right here. Well, actually, I loosened up the clamp, shoved the alternator in, then tighten the clamp back down. Apparently the alternator was being pulled by the belts a little bit up against the plate that's there, which was tweaking the fan into it. Anyway, by putting the pressure back onto it, it shoved it back in the position it's supposed to be. You notice no more sucky sound? Because the air cleaner is also a silencer. See? I need to tighten the screw down in there so that way it stays on there permanently. Let's see, what else we need to do? We need to hook up the heater tubes here down to where they belong. I need to put the breastplate back in. Need to hook up the fuel line the way it belongs. And then lastly, we need to do the engine's proper wiring to connect it to the car versus using my test stand wiring that I got over here. So all this stuff's gonna go away. Then I gotta do the rest of the wiring on the car, get all the lights hooked up and all that stuff. Right now this is all dead circuit, none of it is alive. It's all disconnected from the car. The battery is running only to the engine via that wire, that's it. So this thing runs good. It certainly didn't come that way though. Alright, well I guess we're wrapping up this video for today, so let's go ahead and shut that engine off. Watch this. That's it. So, licky, likey, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to pluck that dingle belly so you get updates every time that I upload a video. Check out duckshit.net for all of my different social media links. And we'll probably be back with a proper small engine Saturday, Sunday, sometime next week. Otherwise, we're going to do some more Volkswagen stuff midweek, and you're probably going to see more of this thing. Because, like I said, we got to do all that wiring on there also. Let's see, what else is coming up? I still need to do the metal in here. Man, I keep saying that, but now I got to get all this crap out of here. None of these tools need to be in here anymore because this engine stuff is done. All I need to do is run around with electrical tools now, you know, little crimping pliers and stuff. I also need to do the rear brakes on this side. You notice there's no cotter pin in that nut. So it's pretty safe to assume this has not been torqued down properly either, and I'm willing to bet that these lugs, oh, there we go. They're not tight. Oh, there, look. They weren't even finger tight. They were, well, finger loose technically. I didn't have to put any real pressure on them to loosen them up. So I got to fix the rear brakes on this side too, get them situated. I got a little bit of rust repair in here. I got to patch that bolt hole up so that way we can put the bolts back into it. I'm not going to do anything too awfully fancy in here because he wants to keep this thing looking kind of rat-roddy. So we're just going to patch the hole, make the fender mount properly, and move on to the next thing. I do the same thing over on the other side because it has the same problem over there. Up under here, I don't know what's going on with this brake, but we do know that this wheel is loose on this side. This thing is bad. Yeah, the bearings are all loose on it, and it's getting a flat now from sitting here. How long has it been here now? 3 weeks? A few weeks and it got a flat. Anyway, fuel tank's got to go in also. Got to put that back in there. It's currently in the trunk. I got it out from inside the car. Now there's the deck lid. That needs to go back on. So that needs to go back on probably soon. In the short term, I can get that out of the way. That'd be really, really nice. It helps the car to look a little more complete. All the deck lid bolts and everything. I wonder where I put them. I don't remember. I already lost stuff. Oh no! You know where it might be? It might be in here. I think that's where I actually put everything. Yeah, you know what? I see the hinges here. There they are. And yep, there's the bolts. Okay, we're good. It's all here. It's all here. We can make this work. Okay, well, fantastic. I guess that's wrapping it up for today. Otherwise, like I said, more small engines, Sunday, Saturday stuff next week. I just didn't happen to have any small engines lined up this week. Rob scored me another gasoline-powered engine, which is in the form of a pressure washer. And we don't know what's wrong with it. It's found on the side of the road. He said it looked like it's fairly new, and it's a high-pressure one with a big engine on it. So we'll see what we got. I mean, that's not something I've ever owned. I had shitty electric ones before, which did the job, but a gasoline-powered one gives you a lot more pressure, and they're much more reliable. The electric ones, man, they fail. They don't seem to run that long, and then they just give up. The only reason I even own the electric ones is because my dad cleaned out a Scotty hardware store years ago when they went out of business. He was working there, and they gave him a whole bunch of stuff, and some of that stuff I still have here now, but all the pressure washers are gone. I put all that crap on the curb a long time ago, and what's funny, somebody came along and picked it all up. Maybe it works for them, I don't know, but I guess I'm that guy also. But if the Duckman doesn't want it, I assure you that it's probably really not good for much. All right, well, I guess we're wrapping it up for today. So, thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.